Imagine standing in front of a door, not just any door, but the entrance to one of the most complicated situations in history. You're dressed in layers of fabric so heavy and structured they could shelter a family during a storm. Around your waist, a corset grips you tight, so tight that even breathing deeply feels like a chore. Now, picture needing to use the bathroom. While wearing all of this, welcome to the daily reality of a Victorian woman. She wasn't just dressed, she was encased. And yet, even surrounded by the elite society that demanded absolute grace and composure, she had to find secret, clever ways to deal with the most basic human need. Today, we step quietly into one of history's most hidden corners. How Victorian women used the bathroom. What you're about to hear may surprise you, even shock you. Let's go back to a time when answering nature's call wasn't just personal, it was an art form. Getting dressed in the Victorian era wasn't something done casually. It was a process, a ritual, a transformation. The first layer was a linen shift, soft, plain, and thin. Its job was to protect the expensive outer clothes from sweat or oil. Then came the corset, tight enough to change the shape of a woman's ribs over time. Worn day after day, this wasn't about comfort. It was about control of the body and of appearances. Next came the petticoats, sometimes 6, sometimes more, all stacked for volume and shape. But the true masterpiece of this outfit was the crinoline, a steel-framed cage worn under the dress. It gave the gown its wide, grand shape. Some extended up to 6 feet across. Moving through a doorway or sitting down became acts of planning and calculation. In homes designed for elegance, furniture had to be adjusted, widened, reshaped, and reinforced, just to make room for these walking structures. But beneath the fashion and formality was a quiet challenge. How do you go to the bathroom in this? The answer: with secrecy, skill, and a little invention. At the center of this hidden world was a single object, the chamber pot. But these weren't crude bowls shoved under beds. These were engineered with care and precision, oval-shaped to fit discreetly between layers of fabric, with curved interiors to catch just the right angle. Some even had lids to hide smells, and to signal to servants when they needed to be emptied. In wealthier homes, chamber pots were hidden in plain sight. They were built into furniture, inside elegant chairs or carved wooden cabinets. Everything looked beautiful, but served a secret purpose. Servants would move silently through the house, checking, cleaning, and replacing these hidden tools. Their job required absolute discretion. No sound, no trace, no smell. The goal was simple. No one should ever know that anything had happened at all. Now, imagine actually using one of these pots. Lifting a dress wasn't simple. We're talking about 20 pounds of fabric, steel, lace, and padding. So, instead of removing clothes, women had to perfect a technique of precision. The chamber pot was placed under the skirt, and through delicate shifts in posture and careful folding of fabric, a woman could relieve herself without taking off a single layer. It was part ballet, part engineering, and it worked at balls or large gatherings. The system became even more advanced. Wealthy homes and event spaces included retiring rooms, quiet, elegant spaces designed just for women. Here, with the help of maids trained in discretion, the process became smoother. These assistants moved quickly and quietly, helping lift layers, place the chamber pot, and clean up afterward. Everything had to be done without disturbing the flow of the evening. A lady might disappear for a few minutes, but when she returned, no one would suspect a thing. This was a hidden performance, done daily, with silence, grace, and dignity. But here's where the story takes a strange turn. For much of the 1800s, most Victorian women didn't wear underwear, at least not in the way we think of it today. The layers of petticoats and crinoline provided enough coverage, or so they believed. That all changed with the wind. Literally one strong gust could lift a crinoline like an umbrella, turning inside out, exposing everything underneath. After enough of these incidents, society realized it needed a solution, and fast. That solution was as clever as it was unexpected. Split crotch drawers. These were undergarments made of two separate leg panels, connected only at the waistband. The center was left open, allowing a woman to use the bathroom without removing anything. It was modest, efficient, and perfectly suited for the complicated dress systems of the time. A quiet revolution under their skirts. But using the bathroom wasn't just about the act. It was also about what came after. Toilet paper, as we know it, didn't become common until very late in the Victorian period. So people had to make do. Old newspapers, catalogue pages, soft leaves, corn husks. Anything that could be used was fair game. In wealthy homes, women preferred soft linen cloths. These were washed and reused, handled by household staff who managed them with the same care as fine linens. And when it came to menstruation, things grew even more complex. Victorian women used cloth pads, usually homemade, and attached them to a system called a T-bandage, a belt that wrapped around the waist and held the pads in place. Materials included cotton, wool, moss, and rags, anything absorbent and available. During heavy days, women had to change these pads up to 20 times. And remember, this all had to happen beneath thick layers of clothing, without help, and without speaking of it. Menstruation was not discussed openly, not even among women. It was treated like a shadow, always present, never named. Even the clothes themselves added to the challenge. Victorian gowns were delicate, expensive, and intricate, with layers of silk, embroidery, lace, and beads. They couldn't be washed often. That meant extra care had to be taken to avoid any stains or smells. Hygiene became about prevention, not cleaning, and any mistake could cost a fortune. For women in the 1800s, maintaining appearances wasn't just about looking good. It was about survival in society. One wrong move, one accident could lead to gossip, shame, even social ruin. Behind every graceful turn and perfect smile was a woman managing an entire hidden world beneath her dress, with strength, patience, and a quiet kind of genius. So the next time you think getting dressed is a hassle, imagine building a steel structure around your body just to walk into a party. Imagine carrying 20 pounds of fabric through a crowded ballroom, and then figuring out how to pee silently in the middle of it all. The Victorian woman lived in a world of limits, of rules, rituals, and expectations. But inside those boundaries, she found ways to adapt, to manage, to thrive. And that, perhaps, is the most incredible part of all. In the grand homes of the Victorian age, doing laundry wasn't a weekly chore. It was a massive event. Known as Great Wash Days, these occurred only twice a year for many households. That's right, just 2 times a year for full, deep cleaning. Rather than wash entire gowns regularly, women relied on a different strategy. They brushed their dresses carefully to remove dust and dirt. They aired them out in fresh air and used finely milled powders to absorb odors and skin oils. These techniques kept the outer layers looking fresh, while avoiding damage to the delicate fabrics. The real work happened beneath the surface. Undergarments, the linen shifts, chemises, and eventually the split-crotch drawers were the layers that touched the body. These were washed more often, sometimes weekly, sometimes daily, depending on a family's means. These washable pieces formed the front line of hygiene, acting as a barrier between the body and the expensive clothing layered on top. Without them, fashion would have fallen apart, but Victorian practicality didn't end at the front door. It extended into the very design of public and private spaces in many towns and cities. A relic of medieval architecture still lingered. The guard system found mostly in older buildings. It involved narrow openings built into the upper floors of homes or towers. Waste from these openings would fall directly into the street or a drainage channel below. And so came the cry, "Gardez, l'eau," a French phrase meaning watch out for the water. It was less a polite warning and more a last-second shout to avoid being splashed by someone's chamber pot from above. As unpleasant as it sounds, this system remained in place in parts of Europe for centuries. But even waste had value. During times of war, especially in the 18th and 19th centuries, urine was collected for a specific and surprising purpose. Gunpowder, urine could be processed into saltpeter, a key ingredient in making explosives. What was once discarded behind closed doors suddenly became a national resource. Households were paid to contribute. In some places, government agents went door to door, collecting waste for the war effort. Your most private moments, it turns out, could become part of public history. Yet for most people, the concept of privacy, as we think of it today, simply didn't exist. Families often used chamber pots in front of each other. Bedrooms were shared by siblings, parents, and extended family members. At gatherings, gentlemen would step out into gardens and urinate casually among the flower beds. No one batted an eye. Despite the discomfort, despite the complications, Victorian women were masters of maintaining elegance. Their ability to navigate a world built against convenience, while still upholding the highest standards of propriety, is nothing short of extraordinary. They didn't just accept their circumstances. They created systems to manage them. They invented techniques that made the impossible seem effortless. And they did all of it with a quiet, determined grace. The ingenuity of these women lives in the smallest of details. They built routines into their day, tracking how long they could go without relief, measuring their fluid intake, and planning around the few private moments they might find. In public, they timed bathroom breaks with military-like precision, often coordinating with friends to share assistance in the retiring rooms. Their mental strength cannot be overstated. Imagine attending a dinner party, corset pulled tight, your body aching, your breath shallow, while smiling politely, making small talk and moving in perfect rhythm to the music on the dance floor. All the while, you're silently calculating how much longer you can wait. You're not just a guest, you're a strategist. Victorian women lived this reality daily, balancing physical discomfort, public pressure, and the constant weight of expectation. And yet, they endured. Over time, a silent sisterhood emerged, a network of shared knowledge passed from woman to woman. Mothers trained daughters in the art of dressing, undressing, and maintaining appearances under pressure. Female friends developed subtle codes, soft hand gestures, glances, or whispered phrases to communicate bathroom needs without offending anyone in earshot. Servants became experts in quiet assistance. They learned how to lift a petticoat or adjust a corset without drawing attention. Their timing had to be perfect, their movements silent. In many homes, these maids were like personal engineers, helping their ladies function inside an ever-moving prison of lace and steel. But behind the scenes, an entire economy supported this lifestyle. Wealthy families employed entire teams just to keep their women properly dressed. Laundresses, seamstresses, ladies' maids, each with a specific role. Some specialized in hand-washing delicate linen. Others repaired torn lace. Some spent hours just pressing fabric and reshaping bustles. The amount of labor required for a single woman's wardrobe was staggering, and all of it existed to uphold the illusion of effortless beauty. Oddly enough, these very inconveniences, the wait, the planning, the restrictions, led to unexpected changes, because women often stayed close to home or limited their outings. They had more time to focus on reading, writing, and learning. Many historians believe that the physical limitations of Victorian fashion helped spark a new kind of intellectual awakening among women within the walls of their homes. They explored art, literature, music, and social theory. The domestic space, once seen as a cage, became a quiet classroom. Books replaced ballrooms. Diaries became places to express unspoken thoughts. And slowly, change began. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, fashion began to evolve. Massive crinolines gave way to bustles, smaller, more manageable structures that still shaped the figure but allowed slightly more movement. Then came the bloom of the bicycle. Women began to ride through parks and streets, requiring practical clothing for the first time. World War I changed everything. With men away at the front, women stepped into roles once considered unthinkable, working in factories, running farms, managing businesses. These jobs demanded freedom of movement, and that meant no more steel cages, underdresses. Fashion followed function, and the modern woman was born. Looking back, it's easy to see the clothing and customs of the Victorian era as old-fashioned, even absurd. But doing so would miss the deeper truth. These systems, no matter how strange they seem to us now, were brilliant. They reflect something powerful about the human spirit, our ability to adapt, to solve problems, and to create beauty even in the most restrictive conditions. Victorian women didn't wait for the world to change. They found ways to survive inside it. They invented, adjusted, and supported one another in a constant dance between dignity and difficulty. Their methods, from bathroom rituals to social codes, were more than just survival tactics. They were quiet revolutions, passed from one generation to the next. And their legacy still shapes us today. The evolution of fashion, the push for better public sanitation, the development of hygiene products and bathroom designs, all owe something to these women. They endured discomfort, so future generations wouldn't have to. They hid their struggles, so that one day those struggles could be solved. So the next time you enjoy the simplicity of a clean, modern bathroom, or slip into soft, easy clothing without a second thought, remember them. Remember the women who wore steel cages under their skirts and still danced. The women who whispered signals across crowded rooms. The women who turned necessity into invention. This is their hidden story, one of elegance, struggle, resilience, and astonishing creativity. A story not just about fashion or bathrooms, but about what it means to hold on to grace when the world gives you every reason to fall apart. But the deeper we look into the quiet lives of Victorian women, the more we begin to see this was never just about clothing or modesty. It was about control, control over the body, over behavior, over how women were allowed to exist in public space. Every layer of fabric, every whispered rule, every hidden chamber, pot, or coded gesture, all of it worked together to define what was acceptable for a woman in that time. She was to be graceful, quiet, clean, elegant, no matter what her body demanded. And for many, that pressure began not in adulthood, but in childhood. Young girls in upper and middle-class homes were introduced to the rituals of womanhood long before they wore full gowns. From as early as age 5 or 6, they learned how to sit without wrinkling their dress, how to walk without showing too much ankle, how to speak gently, and how never to speak of their bodies. By adolescence, the transformation began. A young girl's first corset fitting was not just a milestone, it was a rite of passage. Mothers and grandmothers often led the ceremony, tightening the strings as gently as possible, or sometimes not so gently. The goal wasn't comfort, it was posture, restraint, and preparation for the burdens of adulthood. For the girl, this was often both exciting and painful. It meant she was growing up, becoming a lady. But it also meant that she now carried the same physical restrictions and silent expectations that had bound her mother from that point forward. Her body was not entirely her own, and what of cleanliness, with all these layers and so much pressure? To smell fresh and appear clean, how did Victorian women actually bathe? The answer, once again, reveals the complexity of daily life. In many homes, especially outside major cities, indoor plumbing didn't yet exist. Baths were taken in wooden tubs, often filled with water heated by hand over the fire. And bathing was not a daily event, it was a luxury, reserved for once or twice a week in most cases. Instead, women freshened up using wash basins, cloths, and scented powders. They would sponge bathe key areas, the face, underarms, and private parts using rose water, vinegar, or simple soap. But even these rituals had to be done carefully, with servants often nearby and privacy limited. Many women performed these tasks in silence, behind folding screens or closed curtains. Any sign of mess or odor could damage her reputation, perhaps more than it should. The expectations were high, but so was the discipline. Menstruation remained the quiet burden that most Victorian women carried with stoic resolve. Cloth pads had to be washed in private, dried away from curious eyes, and reused over and over. The process was time-consuming, but the shame surrounding it made it even harder. Few girls received full explanations of what was happening to their bodies. Many were terrified during their first period, unsure if they were ill, injured, or being punished for something. Only through whispers and hints did they begin to understand. The silence around these topics wasn't just cultural, it was enforced by etiquette books, schools, and even medicine. Doctors rarely discussed women's reproductive health openly, and when they did, their explanations were often shaped more by myth than science. Some doctors even believed menstruation made women temporarily irrational or unfit for intellectual work, a claim that sadly influenced educational and employment policies for years. Still, women endured. They learned from each other. They passed down secret methods and survival tips, quietly, discreetly, with the same grace that defined everything else they did, of course. Not all women lived in grand homes, with chamber pots tucked into carved wooden chairs. In rural areas and among working-class families, life looked very different. Outdoor privies, small wooden outhouses, were the norm. These were cold in winter, sweltering in summer, and often shared by large families. Water had to be drawn from wells or pumps. Laundry was done by hand, scrubbed on boards or beaten against stones by the river. There were no servants to manage undergarments or replace powders. Women had to do it all and still appear neat, modest, and respectable. And in the growing industrial cities of the 19th century, the situation was often worse. Crowded tenements sometimes shared a single outhouse among dozens of people, poor. Sanitation led to frequent disease outbreaks, and in many factory towns, women working 12 to 14-hour shifts had no access to private bathrooms at all. They learned to hold it, to wait, to suffer in silence. The bathroom, or lack of it, became a symbol of power, and women, no matter their class, found themselves forced to work within a system designed without them in mind. As cities grew, a new question emerged. Should women have access to public toilets? The debate became surprisingly fierce. Many men believed that building public restrooms for women would encourage them to stay out too long, or worse, threaten the moral fabric of society. Women, it was argued, belonged at home, and their bathroom needs should stay there too. In 1851, at London's Great Exhibition, the first public women's restroom was quietly introduced. It was called a retiring room, polite language for a place where women could sit, rest, and relieve themselves in privacy. But even then, the idea remained controversial. By the late 1800s, more public toilets were slowly added to train stations, department stores, and city parks, but always behind coded names like ladies' retiring lounge or female waiting room. The struggle for a simple, private, dignified place to go became part of the larger struggle for visibility, independence, and public equality. Through all of this, from corsets to crinolines, from chamber pots to coded gestures, Victorian, women carried on with an almost unbelievable level of resilience. They created a world within the world, one filled with structure, routine, unspoken rules, and mutual understanding. A world where strength wasn't shown through loud protests, but through silent endurance. They managed pain without complaint. They solved complex problems without tools. They maintained dignity under systems designed to restrict it, and even in silence, they shaped the future. The very systems they used, bathing cloths, split drawers, chamber furniture, became the basis for the development of modern hygiene products. Their need for comfort, privacy, and mobility helped push architects, designers, and city planners toward new innovations. Plumbing improved, clothing changed, expectations shifted, and slowly, piece by piece, the heavy layers of silence began to lift. Today, it's hard to imagine carrying a 6-foot steel cage under a dress or planning a social evening around how long you can hold your bladder. But Victorian women did, and more than that, they did it while raising children, managing households, caring for aging relatives, running charities, writing novels, studying science, and changing history. Some did it quietly. Others, like Florence Nightingale, Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, and the suffragettes, used their voices, demanding better care, more options, and fairer treatment for women in all areas of life. But all of them, in their own way, helped shape the modern world, not just about fabric or furniture, but about endurance, about grace under pressure, about creativity born from limitation. Because sometimes, the most powerful kinds of strength aren't loud or visible. They're hidden beneath layers of lace, behind tightly drawn curtains, and inside whispered stories passed down from mother to daughter. Victorian bathroom culture isn't just a curiosity. It's a mirror showing us how far we've come and how much we owe to the women who made dignity an art form, even in the most undignified moments. And so, as we step back from this quiet corner of history, we leave behind the powder-scented gowns, the silent chamber pots, the careful brushstrokes, and the secret signals. But we carry something forward, a deep respect for the ones who lived it, the women who walked gracefully through impossible routines, who lived in a world of strict rules, yet made space for comfort, humanity, and innovation. Their world was hidden, but their impact is not.